Lifability family, let's welcome today's podcast guest, Monika Bravo. Monika is a multidimensional human being, multidisciplinary artist, polymath, and an evolutionary astrologer. Monika is an intensely curious soul and uses an empirical, integral approach by studying and practicing one on one with teachers on Eastern, ancestral, and cosmological traditions, as well as psychological inquiries. Her essence is to connect, communicate, and inspire other beings to be authentic. Over recent years, Monika has been leading study groups on human design and evolutionary astrology, empowering individuals with financial education through Bitcoin and Austrian economics. In today's episode, we dive into the various realms of astrology and Bitcoin and where true freedom lies. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Monika. Welcome to the Lifability Podcast, Monika Bravo. I'm so excited to have you here and support my mission of enriching the wider community to explore and embody various strategies so that they can create a more meaningful life for themselves. So I'd love for us to dive straight into what your thoughts are about astrology and its impact on health and well-being.
Okay, you started with a big question. So first of all, thank you for having me here. I really enjoy talking and sharing my point of view. Well, astrology, if I have to define it for everybody, we have to go to the etymology of the word. It says one part says astro logos. So it means that we are trying to find reason within the stars. So if I want to define astrology, I would say that it is based on mathematics because astrology is based on the position of the planet. So that's more like astronomy. So it's a very precise science that is actually looking at the movement of the stars around ourselves, which is the Earth, right? And so sorry. And so when you look at this motion and you keep on observing that with time, you will find some patterns. And without those patterns, we find that there's some relationships that we can connect to. And it has a lot to do with geometry and has to do with our harmonics. So I would say that astrology has to do with what the Greeks call the quadrivium, which is the four ways that in order to understand your reality, you have to understand how reality is made of. So you understand that numbers are like the closest thing we have to divine wisdom, because you cannot divide, like, numbers represent something that is not changeable. That's why Bitcoin is so beautiful, because it's not changeable. But then at the same time, when you make connections between numbers, you can actually use those numbers in order to connect shapes. So that's like how you study space. Then you have harmonics, which is like the wavelengths. And this is the connection between certain aspects, like you have oppositions like the full moon, you have new moons that are very conjunctions, and you have like squares that are 90 degrees. So when you have these relationships, then you start understanding how where you stand in relationship to this. So that's where astrology becomes very powerful. Now, I say that in order to understand astrology, we have to go back to the myth. We have to go back to the Greeks, because the Greeks gave us mythology in the way we speak astrology. We needed to understand ourselves. So we look up at the stars and we start looking at the connections. And then we started assigning value to these representations. And then they represent something that is very innate in us. It's our own primal form, archetypes. This is what Carl Jung called like the primal form. So somehow, I don't know, probably you heard about the hero's journey. So we all have a journey that we have to go through in order to understand what our purpose in our life. So we have different arcs, and astrology is a language that supports us if we want to. Not everybody needs astrology. You can do many other practices, but for me personally, it's a language that I have used in order to understand my own reality.
Yeah, and I feel like, what with what you've just said, there is a lot more factual evidence about it really being a science, because a lot of people think as astrology as woo, but there is so much more to that. And once you start to unpack it and dive deeper, you actually understand how it's so synchronized with the way of being and the way of life, really.
Yeah, well, I want to address the woo thing because this is interesting. So, at the very beginning, everybody, astrology and astronomy were the same science. It is only during the Middle Ages or after that that they start separating this. They don't want people to trust the metaphysics. They don't want people to trust what is not here. Now, when you say that astrology is a language, everything changes. If people say I don't believe in astrology, I always say, but it's not a belief system. It's like say I don't believe in French. You can say I don't speak French. I don't understand what people saying me in French because I don't speak French. So I always try to go to the most logical of the parts and try to explain from the reasoning, from the logos. If you understand that there's some sort of reason and there's the right and the left side of the brain, when you are using the left side of the brain, you're logical, so you're always looking for patterns. And basically, this part of the brain is helping us develop the instinctual part of ourselves that is looking to understand if we're in danger or not. So that regulates a lot of like our polyvagal nerve. So it's very much rooted in like people using their instincts to understand if they're in a state of danger or not. I mean, that's what humans should be, always very much aware of their immune system. Now, the abstraction, the right side of the brain, is more always linked with the artist or the create people that are artistically creative because we and I say me because that's what I have most developed. I don't have a sense of time. I'm connecting things through stories. It's all about the storytelling. It's about going back in memory and to different data banks of memory that sometimes make sense, but sometimes they're kind of like in this world that has no beginning, middle, or end. There's no narrative there. So you bring down this information and you create, but then somebody who's more logical says, I don't understand why that red is there and that yellow is there. You go, well, who cares? I don't want you to understand. How does it feel? Because you see, the abstraction world is more linked to our emotional side. And our pattern logical side is based on the attention that we need to have if we're alive or not. So, for instance, the logical stream is always going to tell you when you're in danger. The emotional part is never going to tell you when you're in danger. The emotion is like, oh my God, it's actually not a good thing to look for if you're in danger. Like, that's why meditation and all that, it tells you to actually learn to discern between reaction and response. So, the idea is to synthesize those two. Some people have more of one or two. I would say I have 3/4 of abstraction and 1/4 of logic. And I'm fine with that because that's why I'm an artist.
So I just want to decipher that a little bit because you've mentioned, the right brain, the left brain. The right brain is more creative feeling, whereas the left brain's more analytical. And then there's this concept where, people can sometimes say, oh, that's just my personality. But personality is created by experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you say something very interesting there. Like the word personality comes from persona, and this is back to the Greeks. They had the theater, and they were playing characters. They were playing roles. So we think sometimes that we identify with a role. So you say, I identify as a mother. I identify as an artist. But these are roles. This is not the totality of myself. I actually am not a person that likes to identify with any gender or anything. All this nonsense for me is just so divisive. I am a human being that is very curious and likes to explore many different ways. Obviously, if you ask me, I'm a female or male, I'm like, of course, I'm a female. I have no problem defining myself like that. But I think that we have arrived to a place in humanity that we're dividing everything so much that we don't see the human being as a whole, as a holistic idea. But we try to kind of like separate everything to try to understand it like science is doing, like people who are experts in this part of the finger but they don't see that the finger is connected to the hand. I'm very interested in seeing the holistic part, and then if I need to specialize I will go to this, and if I don't know I will ask somebody, look, I see the hole, can you come and help me with this because I don't have access to that. And so I think that that's very important to understand. And then as you said, it is not part of my personality to be this or that. It's just I am designed, let's put it this way. I was born a specific day, and there were certain things that they were in the stars, and there's a certain kind of energy that was there in the sky when I was born. So I embody more certain characteristics than other. Now I become aware of those through relationships. When you're growing up with siblings, your mom will always say, you are more like this than like that. Be more like your brother. Be more like your sister. So you're always growing with the idea of comparison. It starts at home, and then in school. You're doing so bad. You should be like your younger sister. She's always bringing homework on time. So you actually grow up with all these differences, like what you're not. And sometimes you try to compensate to be more like the other, to be loved. And sometimes you end up having a personality that is not really correct to who you came to be. And I think that astrology and human design actually help the being to understand that whatever you came with is the best that you have. And it will be good to explore that as opposed to try to fit into society.
Mhm. And so I just want to explore that a bit more with you. So, for example, we've come into this earth with the stars being aligned in a certain way. We've got our sun sign, we've got our moon sign. And so I'll take an example of, water or earth signs, for example. So, water signs being a little bit more emotional. And if we think about the right brain and left brain, I'm thinking more connected to their right brain, and so potentially more creative naturally. Even though we're saying that everyone's a creator prior to us hitting record, but I just wanted to unpack. So when we come into this planet and we're born with our, I guess, alignments in a certain sign, does that then make a difference as to how we're going to be for the rest of our life? Or
Okay.
can we adapt and, also try and obtain some of the other things that are going to help us fruition into our being?
Okay. So let's put it this way. When you're born, you're born at a very specific moment in time and in a specific space, place, with a specific family, with a specific culture, with specific religion, with specific conditions. Let's put it, this is a condition, it's an environment, right? Now, if you want to go and look at astrology, I can create a like static map of that moment. And if I put it 2D and put it out like that, I said, oh, like in my case, I'm a Taurus, sun sign Taurus. And then Mercury and Jupiter were next to my sun. So that has a representation. So what does it mean to have Jupiter and the sun and Mercury together? Well, there's this archetype. So let's say that I'm a person that thinks very big and very optimistic. Why? Because Jupiter is all about expansion, and the sun in Taurus is about grounding that expansion and this optimism. So you will see I'm an optimist. Why? Because these two things are there. Now, that doesn't make me always optimist. That says that's one side, a characteristic that I have. And with time, there's going to be, because the sky keeps moving, there are going to be moments in my time that, for instance, that Jupiter that is so expansive is going to be making like 180 degrees. So it will be, instead of being in Taurus, it's going to be in Scorpio. So it's going to confront my optimism in Taurus, grounding with a different kind of optimism. So these planets keep on changing, and every time that they change, they present an opportunity for you within that relationship to grow,
Mhm.
especially through hard times. We only grow and we only evolve if there's like an intermission, and this has a lot to do with harmonics. I don't know if you've seen a piano and you see that there are some of them are whites and some of them are blacks, but there are two intervals between them. Those, when you compare them to astrology or you compare like in financial charts, those are the places where there's a break. So every time that there's a break, it's a change of direction, and there's always evolution. We only change when there's a change of direction. If we're always like this, we don't change. But when we have hard times, when we have confrontations, so we have things like, I don't know, I was doing this and this happened to me, but then this other thing happened. And then that's why I said, like, for me, COVID was such a great time, because something that it was so awful for everybody became my most like prolific time because I saw the opportunity. I was like, yes, let's do this because I've been doing astrology, right? So, what I think it happens is like when you study astrology, you have the chart of when you were born. So, you have these characteristics. Some of them are gifts. So, when you have situations where you have 120 degrees or 60 degrees or 30 degrees, these are gifts that are given to you because you kind of like, if you believe in other lives, you made those gifts happen, you know. But then you have these other opportunities that are a little bit adverse, and you say, well, I chose that in order to grow. And sometimes this happen through the relationship with your parents or with your country. So it is through relationships that we grow. So when you don't take things personally, but you say, oh, this is an opportunity, that's when astrology and human design becomes so practical as a language, because then you start learning to speak the archetypes and you're no longer thinking that this is something that is fated. You see, Carl Jung said something like this. I'm going to paraphrase him. I don't care. He said, like, if you don't understand what is unconscious, then your life will be fated.
Mm.
And you say, what do you mean? He says, well, then you're going to allow things happen to you. I suppose if you're aware that you're having trouble with something and you do a little bit of like inner work, reflective work, or journaling, whatever, you can. There's so many things to be done, and then you realize, wow, this is painful. I don't like it. What can I do in order to put myself in a different situation? And so you become responsible for what's happening. Obviously, if you feel pain, you should have space for that. If you feel sad, you should have space for sadness. You have space for anger. You hold space for your feelings, but then you start realizing that at the very end, they're happening not because you did a good or bad thing. They're happening because this is an opportunity for growth, for growth. So you start seeing things as like, oh, like when you're on a highway, you go like, maybe we should exit this and go little road, like you start living an adventure in life.
Mm. And so then, if we're looking at health and being healthy and connecting that to astrology and the way of being, if we're not living a life in sync with our astrological realm, really, would you say there is more likely a chance for illness to manifest?
Yeah,
Would
absolutely. And this is said not just because of astrology. I don't know if you know the work of Gabor Mate. He's very big on trauma. I've done a lot of work with him. So basically, one of the things that is very potent that he says is like when you give up your own authenticity, like your own sense of validation in yourself, because you're trying to measure who's going to give you more security. And in the United States, people think about security about the benefits and the job and like financial. And I'm not saying that you should be poor. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying people sometimes make the choice based on the minimum. Like they're so afraid of choosing anything or saying whatever they want to say that they choose whatever, even if it's not good. It's like, but at least I have that. So they're not understanding that maybe there's something bigger for them, but they actually have to make the movement. And so, yes, you start actually, it's like almost killing yourself softly and in little parts. You start diminishing your light because you are so afraid of putting yourself out there. It needs, I have a saying that I say that Bitcoin is like a potential for liberation, but you have to act. You have to do. Bitcoin is not going to do anything for you until you don't move ahead and you show courage. And so, but sometimes people go like, how do I know it's going to happen? You say, well, if you know yourself, you can trust that because you will see when you have trusted and when you have been following what people say. I arrived here with trial and error. I follow other things and then I ended up like, oh no, that's not a good idea. I was not following my inner truth. I was following whatever my husband was thinking was the right thing or my galleries, whatever. I was just like listening, but not listening to myself. So it has given me back the power. So to answer it is yes, you can actually harm yourself if you're not living your design. You can completely destroy yourself, not only just health but also psychologically. You can damage yourself tremendously.
mm. And so, for people who are new to astrology, and they want to live a life in alignment with their being, What are some of the things that you would suggest for them to explore? Because astrology, like I said, we've got all the different signs, but then we've got the 12 houses, and then, we can potentially have a stellium in a
Yeah.
house. So there's so much.
Well,
What would you suggest?
I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my road. So I had studied astrology since I was little, and I studied with different people. But I always arrived to a place where it was overwhelming. It's too much information. I don't know what to do with it. It's like if you have those big books of recipes, and you say I can do anything, and then you're going to open it up and everything is overwhelming because you go like, but I don't have this, I don't have that, and then you go like, oh my god, this soup is going to take 5 days. Do I want to do that? Forget, blah, close the book, go and get a hamburger. You know what I mean? So it's overwhelming. So I was in a very very bad place 2016 after my marriage broke, because I broke it when I was 50. I was in a place that I actually went down the rabbit hole of like being in a place that I realized that my life was not what I wanted, and I was harming myself tremendously. So I allowed myself to go all the way, like spinning down. It was dangerous for me to do that because I started being depressed and I didn't want to live. So okay, long story short, I at one point I saw a little bit of light, just a little bit of light, and I was following. I always liked astrology. Again, I had studied astrology, but I could never read a chart. I would remember printing charts and looking at them, hoping that one day I will have some insight about the charts and I will be boom, I know astrology, but it wouldn't. It was overwhelming. So I was starting to listen to a lot of astrologers on YouTube, and I kept on listening to one person who was talking about evolutionary astrology. And I really liked the word evolutionary because I was like, oh, I'm all about evolution. So that was what got me. But he was not very constant. So he will appear every now and then I will sit down and wait and go, where is this person? So I remember I was, it was after an eclipse 2017, and I was in a situation where I needed to make like really good decisions, but I knew that if I didn't make the good decisions in the next 6 months, life was not going to be that fun for me. So I was in a very critical place in my life, and I remember that for some reason I something happened. I'm not going to go through the whole story, and my instinct told me not to go that way, not to align myself with this person for a business. It was like we were about to do everything. I remember just looking at him and I said, I can't do this. And he was like, are you crazy? We've been working with this for like 6 months. And I'm like, I don't care. And I remember I closed my computer. I was seeing his place, and I left, and I was thinking, oh my God, why did I do that? It was very strong in me. So I went online, and there he was. I was in Colombia at that time. So I was staying at somebody's house. It was very late, and I opened the computer, and then this man appeared that he was making like whatever, the full moon, whatever, and then he was speaking, and I was like, it was like he just spoke to me. And I remember typing. At that time, he was not such a big astrologer. He had a following, but he was just starting, but he spoke to me all the time. So I text him or email him. I said, I want a reading now. And he responded to me. He goes, well, I can do it in the next 5 hours. And we were different like 7 hours. So I said yes, but I didn't tell him that my 7 hours was like going to be 4 o'clock in the morning. So we had my reading. I was wearing my pajamas in my reading, very dark. So I was in the house of somebody, and he read my chart and he introduced me to human design. I have done a lot of charts before, but he was just speaking to my heart. It was so profound. And I remember by the end of it, after 1 hour, I said, I need to learn everything that you know, and you're going to be my teacher. And he was a little bit puzzled. He's like, how do you want to do that? And I was like, can we start on Saturday? And okay. And basically he started teaching me, and I learned with him for 4 years. I was very like fortunate to learn with him at the very beginning. Now he has a big school and he doesn't do one-on-ones, and I mean he's a great teacher, but I actually had the fortune to be like squeezing the lemon as much as I could with him. I was like shh, shh. He was also learning a lot, but it was beautiful. He taught me so many things about how to use the language of astrology in a very practical way. Now, he is a very insightful person as well. So he brought a lot of his insights, and the way I learned how to read the chart was very practical. So, to answer your question, is like if people are really interested in learning astrology, I will suggest to learn evolutionary astrology. I can give you also the name of this teacher. It's called Simon Foster. He has a school. I can give you names of other teachers from the same school. There's Ari Moshe Wolf. Like there are several that they're very good because this astrology is actually based on evolution. And it is based on a man. It has a very, very beautiful story. There's this guy called Jeffrey Wolf Green. We don't know if he's alive or dead because he actually left the practice. He started teaching, but then he left it, and we don't know where he is. But he received all the information in a dream in Sanskrit. He didn't speak Sanskrit, but he received it, and it took him some time to kind of decipher. So he got the download somewhere between the 70s and the 80s, and so he started teaching whatever his downloads were. So the first batch of teachers are the teachers of my teacher, and so there's a very beautiful community of evolutionary astrology. So there are ways to learn. I would say that is the one that makes more sense to me because you learn to read with like a choreography. When you first learn with evolutionary astrology, you look for like six things in your chart. You look for Pluto. Forget about ascendant, forget about sun sign. I mean, you will read them eventually, but what you're looking is what is the path of what is the desire that your soul wants in this life in order to evolve? And that's your Pluto. So Pluto is very generational. So if you're a millennial, your Pluto is going to be in Pluto in Scorpio from 83 until 98 or 96. Yeah, 96. I'm a Virgo, sorry, Pluto and Virgo. So I belong to a different kind of generation, the people who were born in the 70s. So there's something about that desire to evolve that it's represented with the different characteristic with that sign. So you look at Pluto, then you look at you want to know where the soul is coming from. So you look at the lunar nodes, like the dragon's direction, right? So you look at the north node and the south node, and then you look at the rulers where they fall in the chart. And the beautiful thing about evolutionary astrology is this working with the Trinity. So let's say that the archetypes of the houses, so first house, Aries and Mars, same archetype. Second house, Taurus and Venus, same archetype. So then you start learning the language with keywords, and then you start dancing. Like, remember those dances? They were like two steps here, three steps there. You go cha 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 cha. So you learn with the basic. And I say this because I teach astrology. Is like you can do a lot of readings only with those first six steps because it will tell you the core of what that soul wants. So you find a main theme. And I do a lot of readings. I do readings all the time. And I used to be very nervous about readings because I was like, what if I tell something wrong? So I do trust that I connect with something higher, but I actually look at something important in the chart and then I make a question. And usually the person opens up. And then I know, okay, we're going to do a little bit of work here. Sometimes people say that I do sessions that are more therapeutical than anything else. I don't mind, like, because I want to support the person in to seeing that there's something bigger that they are not seeing.
And so, also from my understanding of Pluto, that's where deep transformation generally happens, right?
100%, 100%. But because it moves very slow, then the transformation is not from day one to day 10. It's a slow process. And it's a process that takes time for you to kind of go back and go like, oh my God, that changed. I have the moon in Scorpio. So I understand life and death all in one. My father died when I was 8. So it was like immediately I understand that life is very profound and I can go deep into completely be high on life and very like understanding of death. So I don't see a difference between dying and living. I know that they're connected, but it's just a different kind of you're tuned into a different dimension. That's what I feel. So Pluto is about tuning into the dimension of life and death and understanding that in order to evolve you need to go through that confrontation of both life and death.
I want to segue into creativity and financial well-being, but having, I guess, what we've just talked about, Pluto and the depths that you have to go into. um, I've got a few questions here, and
Go ahead.
just try and I'll try and unpack it as much as I can from my overstimulated brain with all this wonderful information. But a few things that are coming up for me is, so we've got different star signs which are a little bit more attuned towards creativity compared to other signs. But I'm also thinking, if Pluto is something that we go into the depths over time, and we want to find a source of income that's in alignment with our true calling and our creative self, what are some of the things that you can suggest we
You do.
can?
Your intuition is so on point. I'm going to tell you why. In order to understand self value, you have to understand Pluto because it's the opposite. So Scorpio, Pluto, and the eighth house, it's about life and death and the purpose of life, like really going deep into that and confronting it. But in order for you, and one thing, Scorpio doesn't know power, wants to be powerful, but doesn't know what power is. And the only way that Scorpio is going to get powerful is going to Taurus. And Taurus is about survival. And it's about, I need to eat and I need to have a roof. But not only I want to do that, but I want to take care of myself. So through Taurus, Venus, and second house, you learn how to listen to your needs and your values. And that's why when I was working on that in my life from 2000 to 2017 onwards, the natural way for me to understand value and self worth came through the form of Bitcoin because I wanted to go so deeply into understanding what value is, but real value. Like I'm going to take care of my needs. And so people go like, how do you do that? I said, well, everybody has different needs because value is subjective and we have to meet our needs in order to progress. And one thing that is very important is like there's no such a saying that you have to live under the minimum because you cannot be creative if you're in a state of despair. If you cannot be creative if you're in survival mode, that doesn't happen. So in order for you to be creative, you have to have your needs met. So you say, for instance, as an artist, so I'm going to have 6 months at least cover in the bank because I don't have a steady job. I'm self-employed. So I had to learn to take care of my needs more than one person has a job, because the person has a job like knows, okay, I have 500 every month, and then that's going to be spent or kept in a way. But when you have 500 here, 500 no, 500 here, you actually have to start trusting that you're going to have that. So the sense of value is something that you start learning to trust by yourself if you understand what value is. Now, as an artist, a lot of people don't know their value because they're asking the others, is this good? How much should I charge? I was never that kind of person. I was always, it's funny because since I was little, I was very connected to the idea of money because I was working since I was always asking my mom for money. She was like, you have to work. And I was like, all right, so I'll work. It became, our relationship was always very transactional. So I said, I'll do this for that. And she was like, you're charging a lot. And I was like, so how much are you going to give me? So it was always, she gave me this sense of responsibility. So, but my problem was at the time, I didn't know how to keep money in the bank account because I felt guilty that I had a lot of money. Like I had money, there was always plenty. And I felt that I saw people that they didn't. So instead of like being more understanding why some people have more or less, I would just take out and give it. And then I was like, oh, I forgot about me. And then I was like, it doesn't matter. But then this is okay when you're a teenager, kind of. But when you grow up and you want to actually like value yourself and your time and your work, but you keep on giving the money away and not really keeping the tab, it can become the source of poverty eventually because you're not taking care of yourself. So that's where I found myself after my marriage, that I never really care about saving money. And that's why when I learned Bitcoin, and the thing that really got me about Bitcoin and Austrian economics is low time preference. Understanding that if I let go a desire at the moment, like I don't have to buy shoes every week, I don't have to go to the hairdresser every month, I don't have to go out for dinner every day. And if I take that amount of money and I save it in Bitcoin, which is a hard money, eventually that those savings are going to have a value that I could never imagine, as opposed to having a beautiful collection of shoes, which I do have. Like I in New York, I was very high time preference. I lived like the New York style life. You want to look cool, you want to go to all the places and you know that everybody are talking about, and to have that quality of life is very expensive. So, and as an artist, like I had a lot of expenses as well to create work. I will sell stuff, but I did something I didn't understand. Now I don't do that. I will reinvest. I will sell work in an exhibition, and I will take that money, and instead of saving, I will put it into new work. And so sometimes I wouldn't sell, and I was like, oh, and I have to pay storage right now. So those things change with my understanding of Austrian economics and lower time preference. So I changed that. And now, like, I only do commission work. Oh, but I cannot commission you. Well, then you don't have the work. But can you do something and I see if I can buy it? No, I don't work like that. I don't work like that anymore. And it taught me to be more efficient with my time, more efficient with my the value that I have, and also with who I want to associate with. Only with people who actually want to support me or my work, because the art world has become this place where everybody there is a very small place, like a small arena for a lot of people who want to play, and the big players are very little. So unless you want to kill your companion and grab them by the hair and just the competition is so big that it's disgusting what they people do in order to be there. So I realized a long time ago I don't want to do that. I want to be free. Basically, that's why I'm a Bitcoiner, because Bitcoin is freedom.
And that also comes with trusting yourself and having confidence in yourself, right? And with what you're initially talking about, being in an abundance mindset rather than always being scarce or looking out for what's the worst that could happen. Um, so, delving into what you're talking about with Bitcoin and being a freedom source, where was a shift for you, and at what point did you realize that Bitcoin's more than just money?
Well, at the beginning, I have heard about Bitcoin since 2013, and I didn't pay attention. I mean, I had assistants, I had friends. Oh, you should get into this Bitcoin. I remember thinking to myself, I will get there, but I need to study it because I want to understand it. I didn't have a mind for that. I was getting a divorce and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to be. So it took me several years to kind of land in a very good place. So by 2019, I started to pay attention, and I probably bought a little here or there, but I had no idea what I was doing. So I was very conservative. I would put $500, maybe another 200, but I was not really into it. So I will put them there in this wallet, and then all of a sudden, like go up and down, and then I will feel a little bit nervous when things were going too high or too low. So I just didn't like the feeling of money being almost like a game money. Because, like, for instance, if you have $5,000 in the bank, even if right now there's no value in it, you say, well, like $5,000, I can pay my rent, I can. But with Bitcoin, like, you have those 5,000 today, maybe next day is 10,000, and then you look back and they're $300. You go like, whoa, is this a game? So I never thought that Bitcoin was actually fake or not fake. I just, what I understood is like, I don't understand it because I don't know how it works. So maybe I should spend time doing that. So when I moved to Miami and I started stacking Bitcoin there. And obviously I did stupid Ethereum stuff and stuff like that. But then I did not know what I was doing. So, I mean, I'm gonna make fun of myself. So I will buy when it was very high, and I will sell when things were low. So I was like, wow, I'm losing money here. And then I thought maybe somebody knows how to do this. And I always been very much about education, so I started looking for somebody. And this is interesting. It was through astrology. So one day I'm walking, and an astrologer or somebody who's studying astrologer posts something on one of the groups, blah 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 blah, and I said, oh, let me give you the name of an astrologer that she was asking something very particular. So I was on the street, this is like 3 4 years ago, and I looked at the name of this other astrologer, and then the first thing that came in the Google search was a podcast with another astrologer. But I said, it doesn't matter. I said, look, I don't know this other astrologer, but this one that you're asking about this thing, listen to him. I have the books. I just don't have time to look for it in another place. So then I was walking back from that place, and then I said, I wonder what this podcast is about. And I started listening, and I think that within the minute 10, they start talking about Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, because I had been saying months before to my teacher, he had a little bit of Bitcoin. I said, hey, why don't we dive into Bitcoin and we look at the chart? And he said, I'm not interested. You do it. And I said, okay. So I was like, sitting down, was like, wouldn't it be great? There's an astrology that does Bitcoin. So I kept on saying it. And then this person appeared. So I signed up for his Patreon, and it was interesting. He was not really the type of teacher that I want to be connected to. Doesn't matter. But he introduced me to his girlfriend that was doing some workshops for women and Bitcoiners. I'm not the kind of person that joins things because you're a woman or you're Latina. No, but I wanted to learn, and she was giving me the opportunity privately. I was going to pay, so I knew that if I'm paying, I can ask questions, and that's what I want. I just want to be in a class. So she did a 3 month thing, really good. She really knew what she was doing, but she was shitcoining. And so I love her. I mean, she's a good friend. But at one point, I left the community because I realized then when I was studying, because I was asking a lot of questions, and I really asking questions about Ethereum and this, and I started seeing people with the laser eyes and everything. So, and I joined Twitter, so I started asking her and other people, like, what is the difference? And then I started really reading more about Bitcoin alone as opposed to this, and what was the difference. And that's when one day I said, I want those laser eyes, I want to focus only on Bitcoin. So I became a maximalist almost immediately, because I said it doesn't make sense, the other things, because they don't have, and this is very important, understanding scarcity from the point of view of value is the most important thing, because we live in a culture where we talk about scarcity as lacking. Psychologically, people say, I don't have money, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have a house, I don't have happiness. So their life is full of the quality of scarcity. But when you understand that the most valuable thing you have in your life is your time, but your time is scarce because you don't know when you're going to die, then you understand that the value of your time in your life is the most valuable thing you have. So you see, because it is scarce, that's why it's valuable. And that's what really got me into Bitcoin. When I understood that life and death were very connected to time, and they were connected to the value I give to the moment that I don't know when it's going to end, because I lived through that, having my father die when I was 8. His time on earth was very scarce. And I wish I had had him for longer, but I didn't. So I really value those 8 years with my father. And so for me, it was like, oh, immediately. It was about like the opportunity to understand what it was valuable. So I became completely obsessed with Bitcoin, in the sense like I want to learn more. So I finished the classes with them, this woman, and then I something happened. I said, I think I want to be part of the community, but I didn't. I was on Twitter, but nobody was following me. It was kind of like, hey, huh? And then I thought, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something I never done in my life, which is volunteer. Never in my life volunteer for anything. And I said, I have anything to lose. It's going to be here in Miami. So I volunteered for the big conference, and I loved it. I was like, just the energy, just the energy. So then I said, I'm going to volunteer to every single conference this year. So I would write to them and I said, I'm a volunteer. What do I do? So I started meeting Bitcoiners, and within a year, I was already meeting the right people that now I'm starting to speak in conferences, because I am very passionate, and I still volunteer when I can, because I love it. I just love the whole thing.
Yeah, and I guess, what you were talking about initially with the harmonics and the charting, it goes hand in hand, right? And it's so much easier for you once you've understood how things work, and you compare it back to the basics. It's pretty awesome. There's so much that we've covered today, and I'm so mindful of time. But I guess, the main thing for our listeners, they're wanting to start a looking at evolutionary astrology is
Astrology.
probably
Yeah, for instance,
evolutionary.
I have a Substack that if you subscribe, I talk about the like the aspects. I talk about, like, right now I just finished the one of this week, so I'm going to be talking about Mars retrograde and why is it so important that we look into that, because it's going to set up the, like, the next few months of what's going to happen in the world. I don't do premonitions, but I actually really like to support people, so there are these considerations, and so people can mirror themselves where they're at and kind of resonate with it. So that's that. I can, give you also the names of the people that I study with, and I would suggest that that's the best thing to do, because I have encountered people who have studied astrology like I did before, and they're still stuck with the sun sign. Well, there's nothing wrong with the sun sign. The thing is that, so this is the sun is the place where you don't know yet. That's why you're born with that sun, because you don't know that you're not in power there, so you
Mhm.
came to empower yourself. So if you're like for instance, I have a son in Taurus, so I need to understand about value and money, and that's why I came, and it's very strong in my chart that I have to do that. And I took it at heart, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing, understanding everything about value, but not just value money, but self-worth. And that's what I teach. That's what I communicate. It's like, if you find your true authentic self, you're going to start valuing who you are. It's automatic. It's like you start making the right decisions. But if you're leading with fear, for instance, medicine wise, I don't take any pharma, never did. I always follow like natural law. So I'm a 100% carnivore at this point. So everything that I'm doing are decisions that are very much about my own responsibility with life.
Mhm.
And so, but I also tested everything trial and error. Like I don't do what other people do, but I say, let me test that. And I observe myself and I go, this works, this doesn't work. And but I don't do things because other people are doing it, like
And that's
that.
super important, right? Because there are so many ways of doing things where you've got to find what works for you and you've got to have an open mind to be able to explore some of these.
Yeah, and for instance, human design comes to, like, when I do readings, I do an integrated reading between astrology, evolution astrology, and human design. So human design is another paradigm that uses the I Ching, the Vedas, the Kabbalah, and astrology to set up the date of your birth. But then what you look is a body graph of the energy in the body. So it shows you how you are supposed to make decisions. Most of the times people do it with their head. Most of the times everybody's wrong, because some people are more splenic, more like making decisions on the moment. I'm a very emotional person, so I need to see emotions as a wave, and so I cannot make decisions when the wave is here or here. I have to let the wave go, and then I so this is the biggest thing that I learned, like, take time so I can have clarity. And I changed my impulsiveness to a more like a contemplation about things that I want to do. And then I take time, I speak about them with assistance with AI. Hello, AI. Da-da-da-da. And then by listening to myself, after a few days, I know my answer. But before, I used to be very impulsive about it. And halfway through it, I just didn't like the decision I have made because it was very impulsive. So there are strategies that you can follow energetically to follow your own design, and they're based on your chart.
Mhm.
So that's the way to, I mean, my advice is, like, get to know yourself. Know thyself is the most important thing. And then play with the rest.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I want to finish off with three questions that I asked my guest speakers. The first one being, how would you like to see the future of holistic health and well-being, and what can we do on an individual level to envision that?
Okay, so I'm going to answer it astrologically. Okay, so we're at the very big end of a very big cycle that started 18 months ago, a little bit less than that, 16, 17 months ago, where the direction of the world is about looking back at the way you relate to other things, people, situations, or things, and let go that relation of values, and go to the other side, which is Aries, and have the courage to take the space that your individual needs in order to be grounded and be speaking your truth. We need a lot of courage in the times that come. We need to speak up. We need to not be like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job or something like that. So in January, this is going to shift a little bit. And so we're going to see a lot of confusion in the world because of the astrology. A lot of things are going to be very foggy. They're already very foggy. So instead of like being panicking that we don't see, if you're grounded in your own instincts and you follow your gut and you follow your intuition and you follow the primal part of your body, if it smells like fish, it is fishy. If it doesn't look good, you leave that space. You don't have to second doubt yourself. You don't have to go and ask your friend, what do you think? It's like, don't ask for things. Like, if you want to survive. So, my thing is like, I think there was a very big time shift that it was a shift in the timeline that happened this summer. And I am an optimist person. So, I feel like phew, there was this break, and there's some of the people, and I'm in it, that we're looking to rebuild civilization, and we're doing it. We're not sitting down saying, I wish this could happen. We're actually like making it happen. And the other ones, I'm sorry, guys, sayonara. I'm not going to be taking care of people who are victimized. So there's going to be a lot of people who are like victimized, and they're like, imagine that you fall on a pond dressed up in jeans and you cannot get out because it's so heavy. These people are like drowning in their pain, and they don't want to see opportunities. And there's so many opportunities right now. Only if you change. And this is very interesting. Today is the new moon in Sagittarius. Only if you stand a little bit different than where you were standing yesterday, you will see that there's a light. So that's my thing. It depends on you. And so the question everybody has to say is like, if I close my eyes and I see a year from now, how do I see myself in a year from now? And what does it need? Why do I need to get there? Start working. Be bold. Ask questions. And if you do, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, if you don't ask questions, you already submitted to whatever they told you. You have to question authority. You have to question everything. Why? Why should I do that? Show me. I don't believe you. Trust your gut. Trust your body. Trust it all the way.
And there's a balance between skepticism and actually taking action in congruence with what's going on.
Well, the thing is, this a lot of people have been programmed, including myself. I was programmed for a long time. That's why when I escaped the Matrix, New York, I realized, oh my God, I was part of the program. And so when you are actually running on your own node, you're your own person, you're not going to ask the other one, can I do that? You go like, oh, I better know what to do because I'm responsible for myself. So I think that the word accountability, responsibility is something very, very big for the years to come, because we are going to be able to, and this is what the astrology is going to show us in the next few months. Um, the humans want to be expressive, and they want to be creative, and they want to be seen. Individuals, we want to be seen, we want to be loved, we want to be taken care of, like in a way like, oh my God, you're so great, blah blah blah. That's creativity. But we're also confronted right now with the idea of a collective. Now, if we are going to make people feel bad collectively with shame, it's not gonna work. Or guilt. That's what a lot of people are performing, like, oh, you have to vaccinate because you're gonna kill grandpa. It's like, no, that's bullshit. I can't operate like that. So we have to be more responsible about it, with our health, with our wealth. So if you don't know about money, and this is one thing I'm telling everybody right now, it's very important to synthesize all the things, because your future depends on the ability that you have in order to understand the financial system. And if you don't know because you ignore it, you're ignorant, you have to start learning. And you have to go fast to learn that. And I would say this to every millennial, every Gen Z. I mean, I'm already older. If you don't rush, and even with AI, if you don't understand what technology is going, Pluto and Aquarius, you're going to be overtaken. So don't act with fear, but with like courage. It's like, okay, I don't know about AI. Okay, maybe I should go to a free class. Oh, I don't know about Bitcoin. There's so many free things. Okay, I want to pay for it. And question everything you see, because all the narratives that we've been told, 99% of them are lies. They smell like fish. So you go, no, no, no. And then you become your own person.
Amazing. Second question being, what's your favorite occupation? Occupation being any activity that you enjoy.
I would say that, for instance, based on who I am, I love learning, but once I learn, I love digesting the experience of learning, doing something about it, and then sharing it. So I'm a sucker for information, and but then I turn it into knowledge. But there's no joy if I cannot share it. So for me, it's all about being able to share the things that I've studied.
And the last one being, I know you've shared lots of golden nuggets with us today, but if there are three resources from an astrological point that you could, I guess, allow our listeners to explore for people that are had chronic health issues and are wanting to make changes, from an astrological point, what are three resources that you can recommend?
Well, I would not limit things to astrology at all because I think that the whole thing is to synthesize everything. So I would say get into Gabor Mate, like listen to, actually, if you can go to a workshop, that would be the best. But you can read the books, but understanding that if you're not connected to your sense of authenticity, nothing is going to happen. Now if you want to do evolutionary astrology, yeah, you can find Google evolution astrology school. There are many people. I studied with somebody called Simon Foster. This Vorster. He's on YouTube. He has a school. I would recommend. I studied with him. It worked, but not a lot of people tune into him. He, not because he's not good, it's just he's so like out there. So some people just go like they want somebody a little bit less out there. They want, probably Ari, for instance, is very good. I'll give you the names. Then the third and more important thing of synthesizing your emotions is Gabor Mate. You have to integrate your emotional body. Then you have to understand like your psychological body. So do you do evolution astrology? And the most important thing also is, don't forget the materiality, your body, and how it's going to be fed and stuff like that. So study Bitcoin, study Austrian economics, understand that if you have that covered, then you can synthesize everything else. Obviously, health has a lot to do with what you eat, not only physically but what you ingest. So if you're looking at violent movies and listening to stupid stuff, that's where your brain is going to go. So it is a question of integrating all these things into something that is holistic and is more in tune to who you came to be. So
Amazing. Thank you. If people want to find out a little bit more about you, Monica, where is the best place to find you?
well, you can go to my website that is called MonicaBravo.com with a K, but then it turns into something called Studio of Endless Ideas. And then you will have like access to my book. I just published a book. It's a beautiful book that talks about my story of how I liberated myself. I make drawings. I speak a lot about astrology. There's a fun part at the end where I give you some keywords about astrology so you can start playing with it a little bit. I do a Substack every week that is under Substack Monica Bravo. I'm optimist. So that will do that. I'm on Twitter, Bravo Monica. So I'm on all the platforms. Like if you Google me with a K, that's the one. And I usually write like the one and only. So that's me. And I have laser eyes. So you can find me Instagram, Twitter, Noster. Like I'm in many places. But yeah, if you want a reading, just look for that, or you want a study group, because I do study groups. There's one study group that I'm going to start opening for Bitcoiners, or people who are more into that, about astrology and mythology and how to put all these things together historically to understand the big cycles that we're living, because I do see there's big cycles coming that are very interesting to come. There's
Amazing.
like,
Thank you so much.
no, thank you for having me. I love this.
Well, well, this is where your journey of exploration continues. Please subscribe to the Lifability podcast so that you can stay tuned when new episodes come online. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. The mission at Lifability is to inspire you to create a more fulfilling life for yourself and improve your quality of life. So why not share this podcast with your loved ones and create a ripple effect together? Until next time, Asante Sana.